What if I told you you could actually spend more in retirement and still reduce the risk of running out of money? Sounds backwards? I know, but I've seen hundreds of professionals do exactly that. The secret isn't saving more, it's about how and when you spend. Just last week, a client messaged to say, before AES, I didn't really have a long-term plan. Now, my headspace is totally different, and I'm finally living the life I used to doubt I could afford. Now, that kind of peace of mind doesn't come from guesswork. It comes from using a smarter system. So in this video today, I'm going to break down how to get more out of your portfolio without increasing your risk, and how to enjoy your money without constantly having to look over your shoulder. A lot of people treat the 4% rule like it's written in stone, as if it's the safest, smartest way to withdraw from their portfolio without ever running out of money. But the reality is, it's a one-size-fits-all solution in a world that rarely behaves predictably. We've had clients come to us having built their entire retirement plan around the 4% rule. They'd read a blog post or heard from a friend and thought, right, I'm sorted. One had a $3 million portfolio and planned to take $120,000 per year, adjusting for inflation. Now, the maths there look sensible, but when we stress tested it against actual market conditions, it crumbled fast. Here's the issue. The 4% rule was designed as a simple framework. Withdraw 4% of your money in year one, then increase that amount each year by inflation. So, if you've got $1 million, you take $40,000 in year one, then bump it up slightly each year after that. And this feels safe because it's highly predictable. But here's a catch. It only works under some very specific assumptions: a moderate rate of inflation, steady markets, and most unrealistically, that your spending stays flat forever. And that's not at all how real life works. Markets move, inflation spikes, and you're very likely to want to spend more early on when you're active and less later. Or the opposite. Maybe healthcare costs surge in your 70s. The 4% rule doesn't work in with any of that. Instead of following a rigid withdrawal rule for decades, I'd strongly recommend building a spending plan that actually adapts to you, to your lifestyle, to your health, and to the markets. That might mean spending more early on when you're fit and able, and then tightening up later on, or if needed during volatile years. And this isn't at all about guessing, it's about creating a dynamic framework that lets you adjust with clarity and confidence. So, if the 4% rule is too rigid for real life, what then is a smarter alternative? But before we go any further, if you're a high net worth individual and want to stress test your own retirement strategy, we put together a retirement checklist specifically for high net worth individuals. It's exactly the same checklist that we use with many of our own clients who have multi-million-dollar portfolios, and it could save you from some very costly mistakes. You can grab it for free using the link in the description. So, what are guardrails? Well, people often assume the only way to avoid running out of money in retirement is to underspend, to play it safe, to keep things tight just in case. But it's not really how much you spend that gets you into trouble, it's when you spend it. We worked with someone who saved over $5 million and was in a very comfortable position. But every time the market dipped or crashed, he really panicked. He slashed his lifestyle spending, cancelled the holidays, and stopped his family gifting strategy. This wasn't necessary, but he just didn't have a framework to guide his decisions. So instead of feeling in control, he was always reacting out of fear. Guardrails gave him a much calmer, clearer path. Think of guardrails like barriers on a winding mountain road. They don't stop you from driving fast when the road is clear. They just stop you from flying off the edge when things get risky. In retirement, it's exactly the same principle. Guardrails let you spend more when markets are strong and pull back when they're not. You just check in once a year when the market stands compared to its previous high point, then adjust accordingly. Here's one simple way to do it using the MSCI World Index. If the market is less than 10% below its all-time high, go ahead, spend your full discretionary budget just as planned. If it's 10 to 20% below, cut that discretionary spending in half. And if the market is down more than 20%, pause all non-essential spending. This approach gives you flexibility and protection. You're taking advantage of all the good years and putting the brakes on gently when things dip, not slamming them on in panic. So potentially think about marking your calendar for an annual check-in, perhaps the last day of the year or the first, and look up how far the world index is from its last peak. Then apply the rule to your own discretionary spending for the year ahead. This is a clear, data-driven approach and will stop you from making emotional decisions at emotional times. But here's the key: not all spending can be adjusted just like that. So next, let's look at how to separate your spending from what's flexible and what's not. So what counts as discretionary spending? Well, a common mistake is assuming that all retirement spending is fixed. It's set in stone. But in reality, a huge portion of what most people spend in retirement is optional. A client of ours once swore he needed $180,000 just to get by. But when we broke it down, almost $60,000 of that was going towards holidays to golf trips and dining out. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of that, as long as you know that these are the areas that you can potentially cut in a rough year. The issue was he didn't see the difference. Discretionary spending is anything you could skip or scale back if markets take a turn. We're talking about things such as luxury holidays, new gadgets, additional properties, or gifts to children. Basically, all of the stuff that adds comfort and joy but isn't essential for your survival. Your required spending, on the other hand, covers the basics. It's things like food, housing, insurance, and medical care. That stuff doesn't change, even in a downturn. Now, guardrails only applies to the discretionary part, and that's where the power really comes in. It gives you a way to adjust without touching your core lifestyle. But many people don't separate the two, which means that they either cut everything in a panic or they're spending blindly. So make two different retirement budgets. One for the essentials, what you absolutely need to live on, and one for the nice-haves, the extras that make life really fun. Then apply the guardrails only to that second column. That way, you're protecting your long-term security without sacrificing the joy and the fun of the good years. So how does this actually look in real life? Let's walk you through some of the numbers. A lot of people hear flexible spending and assume it means spending less. But done right, it can actually mean spending more, just more intelligently. Say you've got $1 million portfolio. Your required annual spending, food, housing, insurance, the non-negotiable essentials, comes to $27,500. Then there's your discretionary spending, holidays, hobbies, gifts, trips. That's also $27,500. That brings your total planned spending to $55,000 a year. Now, here's how that plays out depending on market conditions. In a normal market where things are stable, you spend the full $55,000. In a correction, let's say the market's 15% down, you halve the discretionary element. That year, you spend around $41,250. In a bear market, when things are down 20% or more, you pause the extras and you live on the essentials, $27,500. In a strong bull market, you might decide to spend $60,000 instead. Take that extra trip or upgrade the experience guilt-free. Now, compare that with the traditional 4% rule. That would have you spending $40,000 per year every year, regardless of whatever the market is doing. So, which one gives you more lifestyle freedom? With guardrails, you're often spending more in the good years, only cutting back when it genuinely makes sense to do so. It's not about deprivation, it's about precision or professional planning. So, run your own numbers, ideally with the help of a caring professional. Figure out what your essential spending looks like, and then layer your discretionary spending on top. From there, apply the guardrails. It's a simple way to see how much more flexibility and confidence you can have with your own retirement lifestyle. Now, here's where things get really interesting, because when you spend matters just as much as how much you spend. And if you get the timing wrong, the cost can be much higher than you think. And if you're looking at your own numbers right now and thinking, am I actually doing this right? Then this is potentially the perfect time to speak to someone. We work with high net worth clients across the globe to create retirement plans that are flexible and built to last. If you'd like personalized advice tailored to your situation, use the link below to book a free call with our team. Okay, so here's why guardrails works and what happens if you ignore them. Most people spend too much time looking at average returns, but retirement risk isn't about averages, it's about timing. Let's say, for example, that you finish 2023 with $1 million portfolio. You're about to withdraw $100,000 to book a round-the-world retirement cruise. But before you do, the market dropped 20%. Now your portfolio isn't worth $1 million anymore, it's down to $800,000. But you still go ahead and withdraw the $100,000 anyway, and that leaves you with just $700,000 invested. So even when the market bounces back by 25%, your portfolio only recovers $875,000, not the $900,000 you would have had if you hadn't withdrawn right after the dip. Why? Because that $100,000 was no longer in the portfolio to benefit from the rebound. You didn't just take a withdrawal, you actually locked in a loss. And that's something that you just can't undo, and it will really reduce your long-term compounded returns in the years to come. This is what we call sequence of return risk, and it's one of the biggest dangers in early retirement. Guardrails will help you avoid it. When markets dip, you scale back your discretionary spending. That way you're not selling assets when prices are low. You're preserving the core of your portfolio for the rebound. It's not about panic, it's about being smart when things get volatile. So hold off on big ticket non-essential spending when markets are down. Let the guardrails do the heavy lifting for you. They take the emotion out and give you a clear signal of when to pause and when to press play. So now you know how to spend more in retirement without the risk of running out of money. But here's the next question. How do the wealthiest people actually save for retirement in the first place? Because it's not just about how much they put away, it's about how they structure it, how they protect it, and how they grow it. So, if you want to see what they're doing differently, watch this next.